All right, good. All right, very well. I'd like to welcome everybody to the fourth meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Appropriations and Revenue. At this time, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Deneen, Senator Douglas,
Present.
Senator Funky Fromeyer, Senator Givens, Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator Neal, Senator Nemus,
Present.
Senator Webb, Representative Banta,
Present.
Representative Bentley, Representative Bowling, Representative Branscombe,
Here.
Representative Bray,
Here.
Representative Brown, Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Flannery, Representative Fleming,
Present.
Representative Frazier Gordon,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Freeland,
Here.
Representative Fugit, Representative Gentry,
Here.
Representative Hart, Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative McCool, Representative McPherson,
Here.
Representative Palumbo,
Here.
Representative Raymond, Representative Reed,
Here.
Representative Riley, Representative Stevenson, Representative Upchurch,
Here.
Chair McDaniel,
Here.
Co-Chair Petrie.
Here.
Very well. Having a quorum duly constituted to conduct business at this time, the chair will entertain a move on the approval on the minutes from August 2nd meeting.
Motion on the minutes.
Fine.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. The meeting minutes are approved. One quick note before we get to rolling here. We have a new staff member, Adam Johnson. Adam, raise your hand for us. There he is, right there in the front row, serving as a new legislative committee analyst, and we're glad to welcome him. Adam, welcome aboard. Okay, we're going to change the order up just a little bit here this morning, so everybody knows we're going to switch the University of Kentucky and the pension update to accommodate a few things. So at this time, Dr. Capilouto, if you would like to come forward, sir, and proceed with your testimony. Gentlemen, if you could just identify yourselves for the record and feel free to proceed.
Eli Capilouto, President of the University of Kentucky.
And I'm Bart Harden. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the University of Kentucky.
Thank you and good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. And Chair McDaniel, I especially thank you for giving me an opportunity to share some information I think you'll find most important. We are proud of the progress we have made over the last decade at the University of Kentucky. We hope you are too. After all, we consider you as co-authors of the story I'm about to tell. You have been our partners each step of the way. Indeed, everything we've done over the last decade of significance in terms of the number of students who graduate and feels responsive to our state's needs, and in authorization and support for infrastructure to meet our mission, all of that has been done with you. Because of your support, we have increased access to and have held down costs for more Kentuckians to the education we can provide. We have treated and healed more patients than at any time in our history. Patients who come to us for the best of care at the worst of times. We are more aggressively seeking and finding solutions to the problems and opportunities confronting our state, whether it be cancer or opioid misuse, energy consumption, diabetes, strokes, heart disease, health disparities, economic development, and advanced manufacturing. and we have served alongside you in every county, every community, and every corner of this Commonwealth. So for a few minutes this afternoon, I would like to offer a snapshot, a few numbers that detail the progress we have made with you and that you have helped make possible. And in doing so, I hope I offer a response, or at least a more full context, to recent news accounts that questioned how we made that progress. Universities across the country are under scrutiny for what they do and how they do it. Healthy scrutiny is necessary. Earnest and probing questions should be asked. Transparency and openness should be welcomed because they help us reach better outcomes. I would submit that we have been faithful and responsible stewards of the dollars that we have been entrusted to spend by you and for you. In fact, there has been, what it is to me, an almost insulting suggestion in some of these stories and the commentaries that followed, and that's the idea that because we are a poor state, we shouldn't be able to invest. We shouldn't want to do more and be more for Kentucky, for our students and their families. I reject that assertion. We have built, not for ourselves, but for the future of Kentucky. And we, with your help, support, leadership, and guidance, believe it is essential that we continue to press forward. That's the case I want to make with you today. On behalf of the University of Kentucky, on behalf of the state we serve together. And I'm here today representing 25,000 employees and over 34,000 students. So what have you made possible? What have we done together? We have been able to enroll, educate, and graduate more students. Take a look at this slide. We like to say we put students first in everything we do. A little more than a decade ago, UK had a 6-year graduation rate of 58%, and it stubbornly stood there for several years. But thanks to incredibly hardworking, industrious, and bright students, a committed faculty and staff, we have been on a trajectory of ascent for the last decade. Last week, we announced to our Board of Trustees that we have hit a 70% graduation rate, a number that places us among the top 100 or top 20% universities like ours that grant bachelor's degrees in the country. Our 6-year graduation rate, that 70% number, has increased by more than 12 percentage points. Not 12%, 12 percentage points. It's recognized on that top line in the graph. Our 4-year graduation rates have increased by 27 percentage points, and our 5-year graduation rates by 17 percentage points. So what else did you make possible? More graduates for Kentucky's workforce. About a decade ago, fewer than 6,000 students received degrees annually from UK. Last year, that number was right at 8,200. The number of certificates awarded has also increased by more than 1,200 in that time period. So according to our most recent numbers that we released on Friday, that's nearly 9,500 degrees and certificates conferred. In 2010, it was just 5,800. This past week, we announced our largest ever first-year class of nearly 6,500 students. That's up from 400 for last year. And for the first time, we have more than 34,000 students enrolled at the University of Kentucky. That means more students coming to UK. It means more students will graduate than ever before and do it on time. It means more graduates are joining Kentucky's workforce with the technical skills and the intellectual capacity to contribute and lead, whatever will face them in the future. So many universities have increased their graduation rates. It's not something new. But many of them did so by making their classes smaller and becoming more elite and selective. We chose a different path. That's because this is what Kentucky needs us to do, and doing anything different would be a disservice. We have increased enrollment, and we have increased the number and the rate of students that succeed. And we have, as always, opened our doors widest to Kentuckians. So you also made possible a way for us to earn our way forward. You provided the incentives that made this progress possible. The performance funding model adopted by the General Assembly in 2019 that was endorsed by all universities funds Kentucky's priorities. What are those? More bachelor's degrees, more degrees in fields where Kentucky has the most need, STEM plus health, more students succeeding from underrepresented backgrounds and low-income households. So we have oriented our budgets on campus to align with these metrics, so everyone has the clear signals about what you have told us matters most. So year after year, we have exceeded the average growth in the vast majority of these categories. You are investing in us, and we in turn are investing in Kentucky's priorities. Specifically, between 2013-14 and 2021-22, the University of Kentucky has represented 117% of the system's growth in bachelor's degrees, nearly 52% of the growth in STEM plus health degrees, nearly 45% of the growth in bachelor's degrees among underrepresented minorities. And we experienced over this period a growth of 17% in the number of graduates from low-income households. Across the entire system, there's been an overall decrease. What else did you make possible? And that is that we could assemble the talent and build the infrastructure for them to succeed. You can see it in our research productivity. So over the last decade, this is our funded grants that we have to go out and compete for. Our grants and contracts awarded to the University of Kentucky increased by 80%, reaching some $500 million. More important is what those grants and contracts have been focused on. As always, how we protect and promote, help and heal, and advance Kentucky in everything we do. In 2018, we initiated several research priority areas. We call them RPAs. In short, we are focusing the talents, intellect, and skills of our best researchers on Kentucky's biggest challenges that I mentioned earlier. There are now 8 RPAs in areas such as cancer and opioids, energy and advanced material science, and several others. More than $272 million of those we secured last year are in these research priority areas. This chart underscores the trajectory of our research enterprise over the last 3 decades. I would also draw your attention to the vital role the General Assembly played in this. At key moments, and if you look at the horizontal axis here, you'll notice these blue vertical bars. Those represent when the legislature funded the innovative and first of its kind Bucks for Brains program, also known as the Endowment Match program. We have been able to take those state dollars and leverage them with private funds, philanthropic funds, so that we've been able to double and triple those investments in the faculty who are seeking the answers to those chronic problems that we face in Kentucky. I also point your attention to an asterisk on that horizontal bar on the bottom. That depicts when the Healthy Kentucky Research Building opened in 2018. Your support and authorization of that $305 million building is what made this possible. Today, it is full of talented scientists looking for answers, for cures, for cancer and heart disease. In fact, without that building and your support, we would not have been able to make an historic announcement last Friday on our campus. And that is the Markey Cancer Center now enjoys comprehensive cancer center status from the National Cancer Institute. So what does that mean? First of all, our outpatient clinic visits to Markey over the last decade have increased by 70%. The designation places us among the elite cancer centers in the country. There are only 56 of these designated centers across the United States. We're the only one in Kentucky, and the closest one is 200 miles from Lexington. And we are positioned to do even more to battle this scourge. In a state with cancer rates among the highest in the country, our progress through your investment is essential to our state's health and its future. So what else did you make possible? You made it possible for us to keep Kentuckians close to home for care. This slide shows what has happened at UK Healthcare in the last 20 years. We have more than doubled the number of patients that enter and are discharged from our hospitals, from under 20,000 to over 43,000 this year. And you will note on this chart that asterisk above the bar in 2011 is when the Chandler Hospital Pavilion A opened. This body allowed us to invest more than $1 billion in clinical revenues so that we could build that hospital to take care of Kentucky's most seriously ill people. And we don't increase the numbers of patients that we treat, and we don't discharge them in good health and better health without that facility and the investment that you approve. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen without your support and guidance. Now, we know that you and our state are asking us to extend healing and hope even further. We want to build community care sites, ambulatory sites, especially in those underserved areas, including those that treat those most medically deprived areas. We are constructing a cancer and ambulatory care center on our campus so that outpatient treatment and care, along with more cutting-edge clinical trials, can be accommodated near our physicians, researchers, and facilities. And we aim to build another bed tower next to our Chandler Hospital, because even with the increased capacity that you made possible, we are still turning away thousands of patients annually because we don't have the space. And our partnership that we engaged in beginning a couple of years ago with King's Daughters in Ashland demonstrates so compellingly that we work every day to ensure that the very best of care is available to Kentuckians closest to their home. As we've said for decades now at Kentucky, no Kentuckian should wake up in the morning concerned about access to the most complex and complicated care when they need it. And all of us know that someday each of us will probably need it, and certainly those in our families. So a decade ago, the average age of our residence halls was more than 50 years. Our last residence halls had opened in 2005. They contained few community or classroom spaces where students could gather, much less learn. Some of them were nearing the point that it would cost more to renovate and repair them than to build anew. So we had to make a change. Our students were voting with their feet They were telling us they weren't happy with our choices. They wanted better options for both housing and dining. So we didn't ask you for more state dollars at that time. We went to the market with your permission and blessing and sought partners. What did that yield? A housing partner, now named Greystar, brought $450 million in private equity to the table and constructed 14 new residence halls in record time. They created thousands of jobs as we struggle to come out of the Great Recession. They are modern and they are tasteful, for sure. But they're none of the swimming pools or lazy rivers beside them or parking decks underneath them, as you see sensationalized in some stories. But they are community gathering places. There are classrooms in these residence halls. We have created innovative living and learning communities where students interested in the same academic areas and career paths can learn and live together. Our Pigman Hall houses our engineering living learning community. It has over 700 engineering students who get together nearly around the clock to advance themselves, their careers in Kentucky. We worked with Kentucky companies like Tempur Sealy to provide mattresses at a reduced cost so that we could use a company here to take care of our students. A private partner assumed all the risk for occupancy. You usually don't see that in these kinds of arrangements. We do not have such an agreement. They assume the risk. We do not require any student to live on campus, and we were able to negotiate with our partners stable and predictable rate increases that are roughly around 3%. We know this: if you live on campus, even just in your first year, your likelihood of graduating increases. Your GPAs are higher, you're more likely to get involved in campus activities, learn those soft skills, you're more likely to make deep and lasting connections that last for a lifetime.
And Dr. Capilouto, I don't want to cut you short, but I have to start questions in about 5 minutes here.
Okay. So we also outsourced our dining operations because we thought the private sector could provide this vital service more cost efficiently and effectively. They did. They've invested nearly $100 million in our campus. Those included facilities with classrooms. They had more nutritional plans at more locations. So that's been very successful. We have invested $4 billion to date in more than 8 million square feet on our campus. The Wall Street Journal recently pointed out we have invested heavily in infrastructure. Indeed, we have. But we used innovative approaches there. Next slide, Barb. This illustrates that we have utilized private partners to improve what we offer and to provide more stability and predictability for what we charge students. We also turn to generous donors, as with our Jacobs Science Building and our Gatton Student Center, to take some of that cost burden away from students and families. It was unheard of at the time, but our athletics department assumed 2/3 of the cost of the Jacobs Science Building. And athletics, as you know, receives no general funds, no student fees, and they pay for every service and maintenance cost in their facilities and for their personnel. So roughly 1/3 of the infrastructure investment has been for healthcare facilities to treat Kentuckians, and none of that is paid for by general fund dollars. We used a variety of sources to fund this $4 billion, such as university cash, referred to as restricted funds, university debt, also known as agency funds, and then private partners and federal funds. So you invested in us in a law building, partially, and the Healthy Kentucky Research Building, most recently a health education building that we hope to break ground on soon. So we relied on agency bonds at about 26% of the $4 billion investment. A decade ago, when we were grappling with what to do on these outdated facilities, our debt payment as a percent of our revenues was 2.5%. Even with this $4 billion investment, a decade later, it is less than 2%. We have been prudent in the way we did this. And despite what you may have read, we have significantly arrested the rate of increases that students are paying to attend the University of Kentucky. We are doing more for those who can least afford it. In fact, our 4-year rolling average increase for tuition and mandatory fees is under 2% for the third straight year. 25% of our students come from first-generation families. 25% of our students come from families whose median average household income is around $25,000. Those students recently pay zero tuition and fees, even get money to pay for the other costs that you encounter on a college campus. And we are doing more with innovative programs. Let's go to the next one, Barb. I'll mention 3. UK leads. It's being mimicked all across the country to reduce the unmet financial need, which accelerates graduation. First of its kind, UK Invest. Every student at the University of Kentucky has access to an investment, a brokerage account now. How do they get money in that? By doing the right things. Career skill building, healthy behaviors, and so forth. Fidelity is our partner there. We've closed the technology gap with an arrangement so that every student receives an iPad when they arrived on our campus, which was a godsend when the pandemic showed up. So let me close with this story. This is something else you made possible. This summer, Ashton Martin stood on the terrace of an 18th century neoclassical complex dedicated to arts and education in the heart of London. Overlooking the River Thames and some 4,000 miles from his home in Breckinridge County, Kentucky, Ashton Martin remarked, "Since I'm first generation, I wasn't really pushed to go to college. It was just kind of like stay home, join the workforce. But I wanted something more," Ashton said. At your strong direction and on behalf of this state, something more is exactly what we provide at the University of Kentucky. Ashton is a member of the graduating class of 2026 and was in London this summer as part of a program we believe is only found at the University of Kentucky. It's called Explore First, Careers, Cultures, and Connections in an Education Opportunity developed by our Office of Student Success and International Center. The initiative was funded by you as part of a focus on creating educational opportunities for first-generation college students. Staff and faculty work together to provide 60 such UK students with a 3-week educational experience in London or Dublin. The students earned credit hours focused on career readiness. They were exposed to cultural and career settings at places like LinkedIn, Diageo, which is an international company that owns Jim Beam here in our state and has supported our Jim Beam Institute, and Compass Group, Alltech, Great Construction. They heard from executives on those teams, some of whom were first-generation college students themselves. And for some of our students, the experience abroad was their first plane trip. But they learned that wanting something more doesn't have to be just a dream or an aspiration that's too ambitious or too high to reach or too far for their grasp. It's an expectation that can be met. It's the potential and power of a distinctive education we work to provide at the University of Kentucky. Kentucky and you are rightly demanding of us a larger and even more skilled workforce to meet the needs of a complex and a competitive economy. To do that, we must educate and graduate even more students in fields responsive to local and global workforce needs. Students who have the skills to solve problems, work in teams, communicate effectively, and think deeply and broadly about challenges. Kentucky needs more from us. Kentucky needs us to build a stronger state with a brighter future. Our students, thousands of them, countless who are like Ashton, want more. And we're committed each day in a myriad of ways to offer those kinds of opportunities. We must, and I believe we will, find more ways to advance Kentucky in everything we do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Capilouto, and I do appreciate your remarks there. But the one person who failed to receive any credit whatsoever was you, and that's kind of been the way that you've approached this job. I think 10 years ago, you and I and Senator Givens sat across the street around a table for a very difficult meeting where you laid out your passion for the University of Kentucky, and in the last decade, the vision, the teams you've built, and the relationships that you've strengthened have certainly pushed the university forward, and you deserve as much credit as anybody in that, and we do thank you very much. That being said, Representative Palumbo has a question. Sure.
Thank you. I just have a comment. Dr. Capilouto, I want to publicly thank you for your leadership at our flagship university. You have brought us forward, and I appreciate that. And I would also like to publicly thank my high school classmate, Tommy Lewis, for funding the Lewis Honors College and for you to recruit him to do that. Thank you so much, Dr. Capilouto, for what you've done.
Thank you. I must say, none of this could happen without the collective efforts of these 25,000 faculty and staff.
Senator Boswell.
Thank you for being here today. The page, and I agree with this 100% about the 25% of Kentucky undergraduate students coming from family with a median or less than $25,000 income. I agree with everything that you're doing here, but just a general comment, as I see things that are going on in Frankfurt, sometimes I'm very concerned about people who are stuck in the middle, maybe to moderate or to moderately high income. It seems like these people sometimes get left behind. So as we go into the future, I hope that more attention can be considered for people who are in a little higher level, but essentially get caught in a trap of very little funding for the college education.
That's a very good comment and one we pay attention to. Our LEADS program looks at unmet need across the spectrum. We know that if we can get even those who are in that middle income group to less than $5,000 a year in unmet need, they're going to be successful. I'd like you to remember this too. 50% of all the students that graduate graduate with no debt. Of that other 50% that have debt, it's around $30,000. So we concentrate on that. We do not want an education at the University of Kentucky to cripple you or your family when it comes to achieving wealth that you're going to need to pass on to your children and your children's children, or to give them an opportunity to own a home and experience things that we know contribute to the wealth of a family. So thank you for that comment.
I have no other, but I want to make one more comment myself, Dr. Capilouto, if I could turn to something that unfortunately is just a tick on the darker side, and I will not ask you to comment on. But I think we did our best at the state level to address name, image, and likeness legislation. But the patchwork that it is around this nation is really causing problems, I think, amongst college athletics nationwide, and it's not a solution the University of Kentucky can implement, but certainly I think anybody on this rostrum or in this body would have difficulty disputing that it does need a national solution that's uniform if we're going to put college athletics back in the kind of light that most of us believe it should be.
Well said. Thank you for saying it too.
Dr. Capilouto, Bart, Eric, thank you guys for being here today. We sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next up, if we could have Dr. Schatzel, Dr. Jackson, please come on up, and we'll talk cybersecurity. All right, if you guys could please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Senator Jay Williams.
President
Kim Schatzel, University of Louisville.
Bob
Dr.
Jackson, Murray State University.
Dr. Schatzel, would you make sure that your green light's on the microphone, please? Thank you, ma'am.
So they did all the work. I'm just up here really representing the new technology operating board, whereas 2 years from now we'll be looking at oversight, the budget. But one of the things that you all did this last session is give us an immediate need that we need to look at. One of them was cybersecurity. We had a great coding day yesterday where the post-secondary came in and talked about what they're doing for cybersecurity. But this is an essential need in the state. We have cities that have been hacked. I believe we probably have ransoms that we have paid for. So this is a serious issue. These universities are getting out ahead of it. They've come to a great agreement. I'm going to let you talk about what they've agreed on, and I expect to have a bill that will really promote the cybersecurity industry in Kentucky and the education that we need to really protect all of our governments and our citizens and private sector. So
Great.
With that,
Thank you.
without further ado.
Senator Williams, thank you, and Chair McDaniel, Chair Petrie, members of the committee, thank you for allowing us a few minutes today to talk about an important topic to the Commonwealth, and cybersecurity and cyber centers, as Senator Williams just pointed out. President Schatzel and I are proud to be here with you, again, to talk about this very important topic. We'll take just a few minutes, and we'll be happy to answer questions at the end of our presentation. Many of you over the last several months have toured Murray State University, the Cyber Center there, and discussed our cyber programs, which I'll touch on in a little bit more detail. We've had programs since higher ed reform some 25 years ago. I know Chair Petrie, Chair McDaniels, Senator Nemes, Leader Rudy, Representative Dossett, and others, many others have toured through our facilities at Murray State University, and we appreciate it. We also appreciate Senator Williams as he co-chairs a technology committee, which will be addressing this topic in the days to come. Cybersecurity is vitally important to our Commonwealth, this country, the world, our military, our business community, our economy in general, and personally. It's a daily issue. We read about it, hear about it near daily. You don't have to raise your hand, but probably everyone in here has been impacted in some way in recent years, whether it's your phone, your laptop, at home or at work. You, as has been mentioned, you will hear about constant major infrastructure issues across the country as well on a regular basis, as well as here in Kentucky. The wars of the future will be impacted greatly by the cyber space, if you will, and then cybersecurity in general. Kentucky needs to take a larger and more aggressive role in this particular area. The Bureau of Labor Statistics have reported that over the next few years, this field will grow by 32%. I personally think it will be much larger than that. Today, it's estimated there's about 700,000 jobs open in the cybersecurity field. These jobs are high paying, they're badly needed, and they're in very high demand. And again, Kentucky must play a greater role in this particular area. Some history very quickly. As many of you know, I had the honor of serving here several years ago. And this topic was important then. We didn't call it cybersecurity back 25 years ago. It's Murray State University's program of distinction. And so it's obviously very important to us. We've spent millions of dollars enhancing cybersecurity over many, many years since higher education reform was put in place in 1997 and beyond, when this legislature required institutions to have a program of distinction. And again, this is our program of distinction. We've been accredited for some time at the certificate level, bachelor's level, master's degrees level. We've been recognized as one of the top programs in the country. Last week, we received a recertification from the National Security Agency, the NSA. We work very closely with companies across the state, state and federal agencies. Fort Campbell's in our backyard, among many others. At Murray State University, we have a vibrant and healthy cyber center and related academic programs. Again, many of you have seen our center and those particular programs. Since 2020, the enrollment in our cybersecurity programs is up 54%. Our freshman class coming in this year, majoring in cyber areas, is up 30%. One of our faculties just published a new textbook. I received a copy of it just a few days ago. We have a tremendous need for added space, other program needs including equipment. We have provided a request of some of these particular items at the request of members of this committee in recent days to be considered in the 2024 legislative session. But probably most importantly, this summer, Murray State University, the University of Louisville, and other universities worked on a proposed bill for the next legislative session in order to develop an organized statewide cyber center network across this Commonwealth. It would be comprised of institutions with cyber-related programs. It would be comprised of universities who have an interest in participating. It would allow us to enhance and expand these particular programs in a better and faster way. It would utilize the Council on Post-Secondary Education as an intermediary for any joint statewide funding to address these needs. Any appropriations made to a specific institution would go to that specific institution. But again, most importantly, all of us, the institutions of higher education in the Commonwealth that participate in this area, have agreed on language that would allow us to move forward in an aggressive way. You should have a copy of the talking points, I think, in your packets today. Many of you have a copy of a draft bill, along with Senator Williams also, as his role as co-chair, I should say, in this new technology committee. But most importantly, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I know President Schatzel has comments as well, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at the end. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to add my thanks to Chairs Petrie and McDaniel for inviting us, as well as the members of the committee, as well as I want to be able to thank my colleague, President Jackson, for everything he's done in terms of partnering with the other universities and amongst the presidents to be able to get to where we are today. And of course, Senator Williams, thank you for your encouragement as well. I think we've read in the paper in the last few days that we've had Clorox going down because of a cybersecurity attack 2 weeks ago. We looked at MGM resorts across the country going down. Every single week we see a major company being struck by cyber and the inability to be able to perform, provide their operations, as well as produce their products and offer their services. We've seen that happen in healthcare. We've seen it in utilities across the board to be able to do that. But recent research has shown the fact that 57% of small and medium-sized companies have suffered a cyber attack in the last 12 months. 57%. Of those groups, they've also said that over 90% say that they do not have the resources, they don't have the training, they don't have the skills to be able to address cyber attacks when they occur, and it can take days and weeks for them to return to operations fully. It's something that, as we've said, is just increasing dramatically across the country. When I talk to corporate people and talk to a lot of business people, they don't talk about if, they talk about when, that they will be struck by a cyber attack. So this is something that we can wait no longer about in Kentucky, and to be able to have this consortium put together and to address it in this way, I just want to be able to say it's much needed to be able to do that. Some of the background that I have on U of L is the fact that we are indeed a Carnegie Research 1 university, meaning a very high research activity, as well as a community engaged institution. And we are nationally recognized at both the graduate and undergraduate level as a Center for Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity by both the NSA as well as the Department of Homeland Security. But something that's also very important that as a Research One institution is the fact that we provide for that type of research with our scientists and with our faculty. Over the past 3 years, U of L has received more than $16 million to support cybersecurity research and training. We are also members of the U.S. Department of Defense Elite National Cyber Command and Strategic Command. We, too, offer numerous programs in cybersecurity from the credentialing, bachelor's, master's, as well as doctoral level. We also lead a national consortium developing a Department of Defense-backed cybersecurity workforce certificate program that is built on technology industry badging from firms such as Microsoft, IBM, and Google to be able to provide that accessibility to the cyber training that is so needed in this country. We offer certificates, as I said, but also we have a law enforcement cybersecurity project that offers training to law enforcement, a National Cyber Teaching Academy that provides cyber teaching to high school teachers, and also the NSA has acquired with us to be able to possibly host the Fall National Science of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity for this next fall, which would be 500 to 600 people coming to be able to talk about cyber and convene on it. So I think that we have lots of talent across Kentucky within the universities, as well as other K-12 institutions and the technical and community colleges. To be able to create Kentucky Cyber is much needed to be able to house these resources and to provide a one-stop shop for all of the businesses, all of the organizations, all of the service organizations, that they know where to come when they can be trained and they can be supported in being able to address this threat that we just see continuing to grow. So I'll leave that with and see if there's any questions for any of us. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all very much. We sincerely appreciate it. So for Dr. Jackson, Dr. Schatzel, does this clear up our issues related to the involvement with the NSA and potential help and funding from that source?
It does. The bill that has been worked on this summer, other institutions also in the Commonwealth have reviewed it and agree. I saw President McFadden from EKU earlier today, and obviously he agrees as well. But this will help us move forward, Chairman, in that regard. Yes, sir.
Senator Nemes, are you good with that too?
I'd prefer not to comment at this time, but I'll have a lot of comments and questions later.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? All right. Thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Next up, pension update. Bo, we'll let you go first.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Bo Barnes. I serve as Deputy Executive Secretary and General Counsel for the Teachers Retirement System. I know we've had a full agenda today, and I've been asked to be succinct, so I've only got 4 slides, but a lot of numbers. I'm not going to cover all those numbers, but I'm going to cover enough of those numbers and make a couple of points so that this committee will be fully informed about what's being represented as it relates to TRS's financial status. With that, we'll go to the first slide. This is our cash flow slide, and you can kind of break this slide down into thirds. The top third is cash inflow. That represents dollars coming into TRS. The middle third is cash outflow, which represents dollars leaving TRS. And the bottom third kind of represents the results of those cash inflows and outflows. On the left-hand side, dark blue, you'll see the description of what those various cash flows are and the results are. In the middle 2 columns, you'll see the cash flows for pension, and then to the right 2 columns, you see the cash flows for the Retiree Health Insurance Trust. 2 different trusts, one for the pension, one for retiree health insurance. So let's start. You'll see in the middle 2 columns we have FY23, which I'm going to focus on, and FY22 for comparison. And at the top, you'll see member contributions for fiscal year 23, ending June 30th, of $368,200,000, which is slightly up from the prior year. Employer contributions, $1.14,600,000. Down from the previous year, and there's a reason employer contributions are down from the previous year, because in the 2022 budget, the General Assembly appropriated a one-time lump sum amount to TRS to pay off certain unfunded liabilities, and that was $479 million that was appropriated, and we received that at the end of the fiscal year 22. So just a one-time payment, and that's why you see that anomaly. Investment income for the pension trust, here we just have stock dividends and interest income represented. Interest income is going to be on bonds, it's going to be on money market accounts, it's going to be on private bank loans and those sort of things that generate interest for us. And you'll see that we were up a little bit for fiscal year 23 over the prior year. Total cash inflows you see there, $1,898,100,000. Now let's go down to the middle third and the cash outflows. And of course, the biggest cash outflow, as you expect, is going to be benefit payments, $2,418,200,000. We also have administrative expense, a small expense. Our administrative expenses are very small compared to other public pension plans at $14,500,000. They're up a little from the previous year for two reasons. The state awarded an across-the-board increase of 8% to state employees, and also we have some upgrades, one-time upgrades to our IT system that are reflected there as well. And those can get kind of expensive. So total outflows, $432,700,000. And then you see below that cash flow, positive or negative. And you'll see the number $534,600,000. That's in parentheses because that's negative. That's negative cash flow. And you'll see the year before, just to point this out, it was positive, $51,600,000. Again, that was just as a result of that one-time lump sum payment of certain liabilities in the amount of $479 million. We are typically, you're going to see every year being a negative cash flow year. Now, let me tell you very quickly, the negative cash flow is very manageable where we are now. We've been getting additional funding for 7 straight years, and this year we're in right now will mark 8 straight years of full or very, very near full funding for the pension fund. So before we started getting additional funding, we were headed in the territory where our actuary was worried about the cash flow problem getting too big. Now it's manageable. There's nothing unusual about having negative cash flow with the pension fund. So great news there. The next line for the pension shows a very important number because you don't get the full story looking at the numbers I just went over. You have to look at this next line, investment gains or losses, realized and unrealized. So the realized investment gains would be when stocks are, for example, selling really high and we sell those stocks at a profit. We harvest those stocks, if you will. And the unrealized is just the increase in value of the assets of the system. So it's a very important component of the financial health of the retirement system. Now I'm going to go down to the bottom two numbers. You'll see $22,900,000. That was the size of the pension trust fund as of July 1st, 2022. And the number below that, $248,800,000 reflects the size of the trust fund, the pension trust fund as of June 30th, 2023. So that's a gain of $1.348 billion for the year. Good news there. Medical insurance, those other two columns reflect pretty much the same thing. I'll just point out a couple of things here. Line items, one, the cash flow. You see the cash flow for the Retiree Health Insurance Trust was $254,400,000 in 23. We have very strong cash flow for the positive cash flow for the Health Insurance Trust. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then you'll see those bottom two numbers that the health reflects the Health Insurance Trust increased by $465 million over the year. Okay, this shows the budget request needs for the current fiscal year and then also projected for the next 2 fiscal years. The top numbers here, if you will, represent the state statutory fixed rate. There is a set in statute a fixed rate that the Commonwealth contributes towards the pension, and that rate is for teachers who became members of the system before July 1st, 2008. The Commonwealth contributes 12.355% of their salary to the pension, and for teachers to become members on or after July 1st, 2008, it's 13.355%. And as you see, this is a SEEK formula, so this is actually a KDE budget request that they make and is appropriated through the SEEK formula. Below pension, you'll see insurance. There's also a fixed statutory rate for health insurance, and that's 0.75%, so 3/4 of 1 percentage point. And you see those represented in dollar amounts: $421 million, $27.7 million, for a total of $448.7 million coming to TRS through the SEEK formula. The middle set of numbers are the additional funding that we are getting for these funds. And for example, for pension, we are getting additional funding. We're requesting additional funding. That's what I alluded to earlier when I talked about the 8 years of additional funding. That's what we need to implement our funding plan to pay off the legacy unfunded liability and get to 100% funded at the end of the amortization period. So it's very important, because when we get to 100% funded, and we'll talk about this later, the cost of TRS for the drop dramatically, okay? And we'll talk about that in a later slide. And then in the bottom part, you'll just see the totals. So I won't go over those. Those are self-explanatory. On this slide, we're focusing on certain fiscal years, historical fiscal years. We're going to focus on the current fiscal year and select future fiscal years. So on the left-hand side, of course, you will see in the dark blue shaded boxes the particular fiscal years we're looking at. And to the right of that, you'll see pension and retiree health appropriation needs broken down, and then you'll see the total in the last column. So let's look at the pension, and that is pretty self-explanatory. I'll be glad to take any questions about this, but pretty self-explanatory. One point I will note here that's important: we end at fiscal year 40 here. If we were to go on out to fiscal year 47 in this slide and show with the retirement system 100% funded, you would see the required contributions or appropriations for the pension fund drop dramatically to about $800 to $900 million range. Retiree health, I'm not going to spend too much time here either, but just pointing out a couple of things so it's understood. You'll see at the top of retiree health column in the FY10, we got $155.1 million from the state. This was before that historic share responsibility legislation was enacted in 2010. I'll talk about that just a second later. But that's before 2010 and that share responsibility legislation. Commonwealth was voluntarily paying almost the entire cost of retired teachers' health insurance. But with that share responsibility legislation, active teachers, retired teachers, and school districts all started contributing substantially to the health insurance trust. And that's been a game changer, and you'll see that in the next slide. This also includes, in addition to the share responsibility, that fixed statutory 0.75%, 3/4 of 1% I talked about earlier. Also, one more important thing to note before I leave this slide, and this is also in the health insurance column. At the bottom, you'll see selected future projections for fiscal years 30, 35, and 40. Very important to note here, if conditions remain the same, because things can change with health insurance, and when conditions, I mean if health insurance inflation remains relatively stable as it has been in the same kind of trend that we've seen since 2010. And if federal subsidies that are still currently available, that are available now, which pay most of the cost of our 65 and over health insurance for our retirees who are in Medicare, if those remain stable, the health insurance trust is on track to be fully funded before fiscal year 35. So even if you took away all the contributions by active and retired teachers and school districts, that $113.5 million you see for fiscal year 35 would be more than we would need for the health insurance trust. So great news there as well. And then moving on to my last slide, this is some actuarial numbers for fiscal years 2018 through 2022 and projections for 2023. And I want to explain those projections when I get to that. The top two rows of numbers represent actuarial numbers for the pension fund. The bottom two rows represent numbers for the health insurance trust. So you'll see on the left-hand side we start with 2008 and then we reach out to the 2023 projections. And you'll see that there is modest growth in the funded status of the pension fund, with the exception of 1 year, which I'll explain in just a second. And I always use a home mortgage analogy when talking about this growth at this period of time. When anybody gets a home mortgage in the early years, you're paying a little principal and a lot of interest. But every year you start paying a little more of the principal off on your home and a little less interest. And soon you get, and eventually you get to where you're paying more and more principal and less interest, towards the end it's almost all principal and little interest. Same thing happens here when you're talking about paying off a legacy unfunded liability like TRS has. Just so you'll know, you will see a decline in the funded status from fiscal year 20 to 21 from 58.4% to 57.2%. The reason for that is, although our actuaries look at what happened every year with their actuarial assumptions versus what actually happened, for example, investment rate of return, number of retirements, mortality, they do that every year and make adjustments to our budget request based on what they see every year. It's every 5 years they conduct what's called an experience study. They look back at what happened, what they predicted. They look at, national projections of what's going to happen in the future. And at that point, that's an opportunity to change their actuarial assumptions like investment rate of return, mortality, retirement patterns, those sort of things. So they did a 5-year experience study that ended June 30th, 2020, and as a result of that, they lowered investment rate of return, and they also increased mortality to a teacher-specific mortality table instead of a general mortality table, general population mortality table. And teachers live longer, so costs went up. That's why you see a decline from 20 to 21. And then you see after that, we start going back up again. A note about the 2023 projection, that will be based on the valuation ending for the year June 30th, 2023. They are still working on that. This is not complete. This will not be ready until sometime in November. I think they're being conservative here, put in a placeholder because 58.8 is the same in 23 as it is for the previous year. And they're just being careful about this because they don't know how much it's going to go up. I don't know how much it's going to go up. It is likely, though not certain, that it'll go up somewhat along the same trend we've seen previously, but just want to note that. It's just a conservative placeholder number, I believe, is what they're doing here. Dropping down to the health insurance trust numbers, you can see for 2018, the health insurance trust was 36.3% funded. And by comparison, I'll note before share responsibility started in 2010, in 2009, the health insurance trust was 3.5% funded. So from 2009 to 2018, it grew from 3.5 to 36.3. And you see we continue the strong growth in that health insurance trust, and that's because of that strong positive cash flow to the health insurance trust that I noted on the cash flow slide. The actuaries do not have to be as conservative for the health insurance funded status projection for 2023 because they have such strong positive cash flow. They know that they can provide a number that's going to be higher because we know for certainty it's going to increase in line with the strong increases that we've seen in previous years. We don't know what that final number is, but they provided what they feel is a good, probably somewhat on the conservative side, number for what the funded status will be in 2023. So, Mr. Chair, I know there's another presentation after me, so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. We do appreciate your time today. Does anybody have any questions at all? Senator Johnson. Representative Johnson, sorry.
I'll take you to title. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. On your slides for the needs for state appropriations, do you happen to have the data for fiscal years 27, 28, and 29? Do you know those?
For 27, 28, and 29?
Yeah, because you went from 26 to 30. So
I don't have the, well, this is going to be rough, I think.
That's fair.
1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and 1.863, it looks like. Make sure I've got these lined up. I'm sorry.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that. It was just, if you don't have it, that's okay, but it was just...
That's about right. About 1.6, 1.7, 1.863, it looks like, for 27, 28, and 29.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Boswell.
Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to give the legislature a little pat on the back for the last couple of years of trying to right this ship.
Yes, sir.
That has clearly been a problem. So I do have two questions that are kind of tough questions, and maybe you can give me an answer, or maybe you can do it for later. Question number one, do you know approximately what the highest paid member of the teacher's retirement system is? And I'm assuming that the teacher's retirement system does include administrators and not just teachers. And then second question is, can you tell me approximately how many people in the TRS system are receiving annual benefits of over $100,000 per year?
No, sir, I can't give you those numbers. We do, in addition to school districts, we have universities, 5 universities participate in TRS, and we have some other employers as well. But I can be glad to get those numbers for you.
So that is not a matter for public knowledge, though, is it, at this time? Is that correct?
I just don't have those numbers.
I don't believe that is, not to interrupt you, but I
Yes.
believe that that's a matter of transparency. It's something that I'm in favor of. The legislature, we provide full transparency for
Yes,
our
sir.
pay, for our retirement, and I think it's about time that we have that for teachers.
Yes, sir.
retirement system.
We can provide that. Yes, sir. We just can't disclose the name, but we can certainly give the data. Yes, sir.
Very good. See nobody else? Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Stevens, I apologize.
Hey, thanks so much. I've been getting some calls into my office from some retirees about the cost of their health care. It's going to be rising pretty significantly next year, and I know that we are very limited on time, but can you speak to that just for a quick second?
Yes, be glad to. So for our retirees who are under the age 65 or Medicaid eligible, they participate in the Kentucky Employees Health Plan that's administered by the Personnel Cabinet's Department of Employee Insurance. And we have about 9,300 people who are in that plan. And of those, about 3,000 select coverage that for family members, so couple, parent plus, and family coverage. And for individuals who select that coverage, the KEHP rate for 2024, depending on which coverage they select, which plan they select, is going to increase from 10 to 16%.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Now seeing no others. Both, thanks for the time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here today.
Thank you.
David, you're up, sir.
My name is David Eager. I am the Executive Director of the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority, and we are the agency that administers and manages the assets for 10 plans, 5 pension and 5 retirement. That'd be 2K, 2C, and state police. I'd like to give a pat on the back, too. We got an additional appropriation in fiscal 22 of $215 million in the state police, and when that plan only has $700 million in liabilities, that not only moved the needle, it broke the needle. And we got another $240 million in K-9 has in 23, and we're getting another $240 million. A big thank you. That moves the needle there. I'm going to focus on just the K-9 has pension. There's material in the presentation in the appendix on all 10 plans. I'm going to highlight. I'm going to go at a pretty rapid speed. I know that the chairman likes to be out in an hour. I can't do that, Chairman, but I'll come as close as I can. The 2 important dates to remember: 2019, that is when the first fiscal year when we really turned this program around financially, and it was a result of improved assumptions and a variety of other things. But 2019 it turned. 2049, if all falls in place as it should, and we meet the assumptions, all plans will be fully funded, all pension funds. 4 of the 5 retiree health care funds are already fully funded, but will be fully funded. So we got a 30-year period, and the news is good. I mean, we are headed in the right direction. It's just going to take a long time. I'm trying to get it to move. Yeah, arrow down, page down, done. I'll start explaining. Side and side. Okay, got it. Cash flow. I'll start talking about. There we go. Cash flows.
Okay.
So what did you do? Right. Okay. Cash flow. I'm going to focus on fiscal 23. I'm going to focus on the pension funds. I'm going to tell you we're in great shape from a cash flow standpoint, primarily because of the fact that the contribution levels are so high. So total cash inflow in 23 was $1,445,000. Outflow for primarily benefits, $1,049,000. We were positive almost $400 million just in our bank account, if you will. Cash coming in, cash going out. That's incredible. You look long and hard to find another state retirement plan that has a ratio like that. Very much, very, very positive and very important. On top of that, we had investment gains of $134 million. So the plan that K-9 has grew by $530 million. And in the prior year, when we had significant investment losses, we were almost flat on from a standpoint of netting out the budget. 24 normal costs on pensions is $997. The amortization of the unfunded liability for pensions and insurance is $994. Contribution is going to be $1,012 in pensions and $117 million in insurance for the total of $1,129. Our budget for 25 and 26 looks better. Normal cost is coming down to $890. The pension amortization goes to $819 for both years. There is no amortization of the insurance. They've gotten so well funded, and therefore the total is the budget's going to be $939 million versus $1,129. Major improvement, and the hard work and the additional appropriations and investments that are exceeding our assumptions and favorable Medicare rates all contribute to this. So, historically, contributions. And again, I'm going to focus on pensions, and it's K-9 has. If you went back to 2010, it was $144 million. 2015, we began to get to full arc in that period of time. Now, so it jumped to 521. Back to 2010, we were not getting the full arc, and the assumptions were too liberal. So the next move is in 2020. Actually, began in 2019, but I'm showing every 5 years. The assumptions were changed. It had added about $5 billion to the liability, and to pay for that, we had to raise the contribution rates significantly, and it resulted in significant increase in dollar contributions, $949. Current year in 24, we're getting $1,275,000, $1,252,000, $240 million additional appropriation is in that number. Going forward, we're looking at the $918 million for the 2 years, and if you project out 30 to 2030, 35, and 40, essentially around $900 million. So I jokingly say the train is on the track. It's a long way to go, but we're in good shape in terms of structurally what's happening. Actuarial conditions, back to 18, we had an unfunded liability of 13.7. Today it's 12.3. It's been trending down generally since 2019. That's kind of a key date. The funded status in 2018 was 12.9. In other words, if we had a liability of $1, we had 12.9 cents. And that liability was what we currently owed. It wasn't anything in the future. It was what we would currently owe to pay off the benefits if you were to terminate the plan. So we were in terrible shape. And it's been improving every year. We're up to 22.2. As Bo said, the increments get bigger and bigger and bigger as we go forward. 2049 is the year we're looking at where that'll be 100%. And the healthcare is in good shape. I just bottom line say that. We were asked to go back and look at historically assumptions, and I'll go back to 2016. We were assuming a payroll growth of 4%. And why is that important? It's because we received 1% of the payroll to fund. That was how the funding was done, as a percent of payroll. So if you assume every year it's going to go up 4%, you're assuming we're going to get 4% more money, 4% more. It was actually going down at about 2.5% for 10 years. We were creating this large gap in funded status. It was a huge contributor to the problem that we had. But it's been zero in 2017 going forward. Again, it didn't impact the budget until 2019 because of the actuarial cycle. Hard to explain, but it flows through in about a year and a half. We reduced the investment assumption from 675 to 525, and we've kept it there. There was a debate this past year, and I shouldn't say a debate. There was the board votes every year, and they voted to continue it at 5.25. Life expectancy has been increasing. I'll show you a little more detail on that, but most recently it's come down a bit. Male and female. Females are generally 2.5 years longer than males. And the employer contribution rate took that big bump in 2019. This is pension only. It went from 42 roughly to 71. People have sometime in their mind this 83.43. That was the total contribution rate, including insurance. And that was the peak, 83.43, in terms of what was paid. And it's now gradually coming down. Not to go into detail, I'm happy to talk about it at another point, but House Bill 8 that was passed is a significant structural change that benefited the system and kept it just improved the financial condition of it. By the way, I may have not said this, but anybody wants to follow up with a call and ask questions, please do so. I'm trying to get through this in a pretty rapid sense.
And we appreciate that.
Last was the life expectancy. If you went back before 2015, I'm going to focus on the males. That's the top group. The females, again, are like 2.5 to 3 years longer. We assumed they would live 17.8 years. At age 65, a male would live 17.8 years. In 2015, we bumped it up. I say we. The actuaries recommended that it go to 19. And the actuaries use our retiree base as the basis for making that determination. We don't use national tables. We use our actual retirees. So they bumped it to 19 in 2019, then they bumped it to 21.4, but they also said, gee, somebody who's 40 years old is going to live longer than somebody who's retiring at 65 today. So they did what's called an incremental. So 21.4 for somebody retiring at 25, but somebody retiring at 30 who's now 5 years younger today is going to be 21.8 and so forth. Most recently, they've moved it back down to 19.8. COVID being a large part of that, just general health, but we've actually reduced the mortality assumption. And in doing so, it reduces the cost because we have less liability because people are not we don't anticipate them living as long. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, David. We start with Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. First off, I just wanted to commend the board publicly for resisting urges and maintaining the 5.25% rate. I think that's prudent, so thank you for that. And I just wanted a general comment. Back in as far back as 2015, we've been looking at the systems, and we recognized the mess that it was. And we have put some pretty difficult decisions in place as far as trying to reduce the cost, and you've been a part of that ever since then. I know that. We've made some what I would call painful contributions because it had to take from something to do this. But we've done it. I would just want to encourage everyone to remember that we're not there yet. We've gone through some pain. We're going to have some more pain. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a long way off. As long as we stay the course, we will get there. And with the work that Dave and Bo both have been doing, we'll get there. But we must stay the course. And it's going to be very tempting to get off course. But I'm going to encourage everybody, not only in this committee, but as we go forward, everyone to stay the course.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you. Yeah, Dave, I think you'll remember our first meeting. The first thing I said to you was, welcome aboard to the new captain of the Titanic. It doesn't feel quite so dire anymore, but that doesn't mean that we don't still have work to do. First of all, my compliments on the cash flow issues. You know that our late friend Joe Bowen will be smiling mightily with a sustained positive cash flow. I am going to point out, though, you did your board and your actuaries have recommended reducing the actuarially required contribution this time around. But I'm going to encourage the members of this body that does not mean that we should reduce the number of dollars going in.
Yeah. It's not a reduction in the, it flows out of a number of things, though. It flows out of lower Medicare rates. It flows out of improved performance. So they didn't take an action to reduce it.
That's correct.
It just flowed through the actuarial process.
Correct. But nonetheless, my recommendation to this body will remain the same, which is at least in raw dollars, at least as much needs to keep going in, because while we are having success, that does not mean we should slow down on the pace of that at all, even though statutorily we could. We're still at 22% funded, and you know, that's very, very tough. I do think that maybe after this next budgetary cycle, we ought to take a look and see if we are able to sustain some degree of momentum on the payroll growth. That was obviously a very painful discovery back in the day, as were the mortality tables, the rates of return, on and on and on. And I echo Representative Johnson's comments on my kudos to the board for their discipline and holding the ground on that for the time being. But I do think if we can find a way for sustained payroll growth as a legislative reality, that maybe you guys ought to begin looking at it as a bit of an actuarial reality as well. But that's after we get through this next budget session, you know, begin having that conversation.
Okay.
All right, seeing no other. Thanks, sir, as always.
Thank you. Thank you all again for the appropriations, the additional appropriations.
All right, Senator Chambers Armstrong. You are last on the list, ma'am, but first in our hearts, so please come on up. If you and your guests would please identify yourselves for the record and proceed.
Thank you. I'm Senator Cassie Chambers Armstrong.
And I'm Deanna Hornback with the St. Bernadette Diaper Bank.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe that we are also joined by a virtual witness who's going to testify, and if I may ask her to introduce herself as well.
Please do.
This is Lacey Jarrell, Manager of State Policy from the National Diaper Bank Network.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, first I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you to the members of the committee. Bill Request 178, which is in your folder, is a simple bill. It waives the sales tax on diapers, and it has a simple purpose: to make diapers more affordable for families in Kentucky. This is a bill that is close to my heart. In November 2020, I began spending between $150 to $200 a month on diapers. That is the month that we welcomed our second son, and I joined the club of moms with 2 kids under the age of 2. Those early days presented many challenges, many of you will be familiar with, making sure my 1-year-old didn't whack his brother on the head, figuring out how I was going to stay awake during the day, figuring out how to navigate the world with 2 children going in 2 totally opposite directions. And I'm very grateful during that time that affording diapers was not a primary concern for our family. However, for many families, in fact, for half of families welcoming a new child in Kentucky, that is not the case. Families like mine can spend up to $2,000 a year on this basic necessity, and WIC and Medicaid offer no assistance. That means families are left to rely on charitable organizations like the one Deanna, sitting next to me, runs. She runs our only diaper bank in the state of Kentucky. You'll hear today from Deanna about the way that diaper need puts families, especially babies, in jeopardy. Some families resort to washing and reusing disposable diapers, turning them inside out, or leaving their child in the same diaper all day, hoping that that child won't develop a severe enough diaper rash that they need to go to the hospital. Families will make decisions to buy less food for themselves or for their other children because they just don't have enough money to make ends meet. Other families will keep their kids home from daycare because they cannot afford the amount of money they need to send diapers with their child to that program, and some families will lose their jobs as a result of that. So we might not be able to address all of the diaper need here today in the legislature, but we can make a difference. On my way into Frankfort today, I stopped at a store. I bought enough diapers for a family to meet the need of a family with 2 children for a month, something I know a lot about because I've been buying for a family with 2 children for a long time. I have here the receipt, if anyone wants to look at it later. It was $202.41 to purchase those diapers. I'll donate them to Deanna, and she'll take them back home to make sure they reach families in need. However, on this receipt, you can also see $11.46 of the amount I paid was sales tax for the state of Kentucky. Of the $2,000 a family will spend annually on diapers, $115 goes to the state as sales tax. Many states have already waived sales tax on diapers, and when they do, the results are remarkable. We see families in low-income neighborhoods buy 6% more diapers, and we see the purchase of children's pain medications in those same neighborhoods decrease by 6.2%. Babies are healthier, they aren't getting severe diaper rash, families are better able to meet their needs. This is a common sense policy. It is the best way to make sure that every family in need is keeping that money in their pocket at this crucial time of transition. And I will say this bill also aids other groups, such as people with disabilities and older individuals, as it also exempts adult diapers from sales tax. With that, I'm very honored to be here today with Lacey Jarrow from the National Diaper Bank, who has just a couple of minutes about what this policy has looked like in other states. And then sort of the guest of the hour, Ms. Deanna Hornback with St. Bernadette's Church Diaper Bank, which again is the only organization in Kentucky meeting the diaper need in our state. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Lacey Jarrow.
Thank you, Senator, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me here today to speak about diaper need. This happens to fall on National Diaper Need Awareness Week, where we're making the effort to raise greater awareness for diaper need. The National Diaper Bank Network leads a nationwide movement dedicated to helping individuals, children, and families access the basic necessities they require to thrive and reach their full potential. Our active membership includes more than 300 basic needs banks across the country in all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. But as the Senator mentioned, here in Kentucky, St. Bernadette's Diaper Bank is the only diaper bank located in the state. They work extremely hard to address the diaper need in their community, relying on philanthropic donations and volunteer time to run their bank and continue their efforts. Across the country, diaper banks are seeing unprecedented demand for their services. Since 2020, diaper banks have reported a 200 to 600% increase in need for diapers. Not surprisingly, at the same time, we are seeing that the number of families experiencing diaper need is increasing. The Senator mentioned 1 in 2 U.S. families with young children are experiencing diaper need. This is up from 1 in 3 from a study that was conducted in 2010. Diaper need is widespread and cuts across income levels. In 2023, 66% of families experiencing diaper need are low income, 28% are middle income, and 6% are high income. These numbers represent what we all know. Diapers are expensive and families nationwide are feeling the effects. The need certainly exists here in Kentucky, as Deanna will speak to, and now more than ever, families could use a break. Exempting diapers from state sales tax is an opportunity for Kentucky to support families and provide opportunities for parents and children. If passed, Kentucky would join 18 states and DC who have already exempted diapers from sales tax. Texas, North Dakota, Indiana, and Florida are among the most recent states to have passed this important legislation. Providing diapers has been linked to positive economic outcomes. When low-income families cannot afford enough diapers, parents cannot go to work. And when diaper need is a barrier to childcare, adults miss an average of 5 workdays a month. A Connecticut study on the economic impact of diaper banks found that parent income increased by $11 for every $1 invested in diaper assistance. Diapers create opportunities. And without the sales tax on diapers, families will have more access to these opportunities and greater access to the basic necessities that a baby requires to stay healthy, clean, and dry, and a parent requires to continue to be able to work. On behalf of the National Diaper Bank Network, I ask that you support this legislation to exempt diapers from sales tax this legislative session and support families here in Kentucky that are currently wondering where their next set of diapers are going to come from. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd now like to turn it over to Ms. Deanna Hornback with the St. Bernadette's Diaper Bank.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Again, my name's Deanna Hornback, and I am the founder of the St. Bernadette Diaper Bank. And we have been relieving the diaper need, or trying to help relieve the diaper need in Louisville for 10 years. So as the Senator and the National Diaper Bank said, 1 in 2 families struggle with diaper need. And one of the things that caught my attention for Kentucky was 28% of households are single-parent households. Over the past year and a half, we've gone from serving 13 to 30 agencies in Louisville alone. By increasing the number of agencies we serve, we went from distributing 195,000 diapers a year to those in need to this year being on track to give out 500,000 for the year. Even with this large increase, it's still not enough. A study done in 2018 by the National Diaper Bank Network showed to meet the need in Louisville alone with just 50 diapers per month per child, we would need to give out 3 million diapers for the year. And that's just 50 diapers a month per child, which we all know is still not going to meet the need of all the diapers you have to take care of your baby. If a family spends $1,080 in a year on diapers, by removing the 6% sales tax, a family will save $64.80 in 1 year just for one child on diapers. If a diaper averages 30 cents, this would allow for 216 more changes for a year. We must put this basic need for our future generation as our top priority. We all expect when we go to a restaurant or we go to an event that they provide restrooms or porta potties for us to use. With a baby, we need to give them that same respect. Their diaper, it's their porta potty, it's their restroom all the time. Not being able to change a baby in a timely manner affects a baby's health. As the National Diaper Bank said, it causes diaper rash, it causes infections. And this could cause a baby to have medical treatment, which is another costly expense on those in need. Diapers are as important as food and must be addressed. But not only it causes the medical issues, it can cause mental issues with stress such as anxiety or depression, which sometimes even often leads to child abuse. By addressing diaper need, not only will you be helping those in need, but you will also be helping our economy. As the National Diaper Bank said, when they're able to buy diapers to go to work, then the child can go to daycare because that extends their supply of diapers that they need. And as was mentioned, 18 states plus Washington, D.C. have taken this crucial step. And I know Kentucky can do the same. And now I would like to read just a couple quick testimonials from people who do receive diapers from agencies we help to assist them in this need. Diapers are a basic need for parents with young children. And this is from a lady that participates in Parenting for Success through Little Way Pregnancy Center. And she said the main problem is that they cost almost $80 for a month of diapers per child. It can be really expensive for parents with multiple kids as well. Diapers are almost like a luxury that many can't afford. I can't afford them because there is no government assistance to help. I am also grateful for receiving diapers from Little Way, as it has really supported me with this need. And then another one that really touched my heart that's really important is this lady is a foster parent. She chose to foster a 1-year-old and a 4-week-old. And she said that she's gone to a couple different agencies to get help with diapers, but they could just supply like a small sleeve, once a month. And the one agency she went to could supply a small sleeve once every 3 months. She said even with that, it's not enough. And the reason this really touched my heart is because I know how there's so many children who are in our foster care system that I would hate for anyone that had the space and had the food to foster a child would hesitate due to diaper need. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this very important need, because it's such a silent need and people just don't think about it. When I had my daughter 12 years ago, I was fortunate. I changed my daughter, and I didn't really think about the cost because it was just a basic need that had to be met. So when we started hearing about babies being in the same diaper and, no diaper bank in Kentucky, it really made an impact of how I thought when I changed my daughter. So I just want to thank you again, and, please consider removing this tax not only to help Kentucky, but to help other people around the world. Take us as an example of one of those willing to help our most vulnerable. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, I do want to thank Deanna publicly. She does not receive a cent of compensation for the work she does on the Diaper Bank. It is a volunteer-run ministry out of St. Bernadette, and they are making a huge difference in our community. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. And Deanna, please accept the thanks from the committee as well. It's people like you who take on missions like that, who, for no compensation, but just from the goodness of your heart, that really do make the world go round and make the Commonwealth a better place. So thank you very much for what it is that you do.
Thank you. And I also, would like to just thank, I have many volunteers, and without all the volunteers and without the church willingly approving this ministry over 10 years ago, this would have never been possible. So I'm just very grateful to all the volunteers and to all of you all for listening to us today, because it takes, as they say, it takes a village, and I think it's going to take all of us to help end this diaper need.
Thank you. Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just an education process for me. When we use the term low income, are we including or excluding those persons who are already on public assistance?
No, that includes those as well.
Thank you.
If I may, Senator, I think one of the things about diaper need is that there are no public assistance programs that cover it. So a family that can't afford diapers can't go to Medicaid or go to WIC for that need. And as is the case with my family, it can be several $1,000s a year. And so I think one of the reasons you've seen so many states like Texas, Florida, Indiana, all in the past year move forward with this policy is a recognition that we want to make sure that we're setting our youngest and most vulnerable citizens up for a lifetime of health, and also making sure that we're supporting families as they make that emotional, social, financial transitioning to welcoming a child. But thank you for the question.
Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hornbeck, good to see you. Just as a disclosure, she's one of my constituents, and we've teamed up on a couple things in terms of trying to address LG&E and the light bills and so on. We're still working on that. But in any event, just a quick question: the $6.1 million, Senator, that's, I think it's been identified. What is the total amount? Will that include? What's the total universe in terms of? Not 6.1. I know it's much higher than that, and it's an estimate. Do you have any better numbers in that regards?
Thank you for the question, Representative, and thank you for pointing out. There is a fiscal note in the folders for the senators and representatives who haven't seen it yet. It's about $6.1 million. I believe that is likely a high number, quite frankly. We know that families, whenever they are undergoing the financial strain of having a new child, every dollar you put into their pocket, they reinvest back into buying things for that child. It's one of the times of the biggest financial stress for families. I expect that if we lower the price of diapers, we will see families buy other types of things they need for that baby. The numbers in the folder are the most up-to-date that we have, which suggests that the total fiscal impact when fully implemented is $6.1 million.
Thank you very much. I know when I was out, when I did a run to buy things for my girls, I found that the blue diapers, you get 10, or you get 5 for $10, and the pink diapers, you get 10 for, no, you get 5 for $10. I mean, it's like a complete difference. There's a price disparity between the girls and the boys' diapers. I appreciate you work on that. A little discrimination, I think.
Thank you, Representative. We'll look into that.
Very good. Senator Boswell.
Well, so if we do this, then for people who are upper income, it also gives them a tax break?
It means that anyone who is purchasing diapers, whether because they have a child or they might be caring for an adult with a disability or a person with a disability, will not have to pay the sales tax. We already don't charge sales tax for other necessary items such as groceries or prescriptions. This would merely identify that diapers are a necessary item. It's a health issue. If babies don't have access to enough diapers, they end up in the hospital, and that's something we want to avoid. And so I understand that people, some places choose to invest in programs to make sure that they are especially reaching low-income families. I think that's great. I fully support those efforts. And across the board, removal of the sales tax is the only way to make sure that every family who is welcoming a child, particularly those who are the most vulnerable and the hardest to reach, are benefiting from this. Thank you for the question, Senator.
Very good. Okay, seeing no others, Senator Chambers Armstrong, thank you, ma'am. Deanna, thank you very much for your time, for your service today. We sincerely appreciate it, and hopefully you learned a little bit about the state's pension plans too while you're at it. Always riveting. Very well. To the members of the committee, you have a series of follow-up correspondence, PowerPoint slides, presentations, etc. In your agendas. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at those. And our next meeting will be Wednesday, October the 18th at 1 p.m. back in this room. Seeing no other business to come before the committee, we'll stand adjourned.